You could have given up, but you didn't. You could have stopped believing, but you didn't. You could have kept living their expectations, but you decided to make this life your own. And in turn, you're here. Hello everyone, today we're meeting Paul Zolman. He is the author of the book, Role of Love. Hello Paul, thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Anna. So glad to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's start our conversation by diving into your journey of becoming the person you are today. What led you to discover your true passion in life? How did it start for you?
Well, it started from the way it doesn't start for most people. Most people learn what's good about life and what are the good things to do in life. I didn't start out that way. I learned what was bad, and then I had to find what was good. But I want to back up just a little bit, Anna, to tell part of the story. And I think it's very important for your listeners to understand this part of the story. I had a grandfather that lived in the late 1800s, and he lived in Indiana, United States, and had 9 children. After that ninth child, his wife passed away, and he was so distraught that he decided he was going to sell the farm, sell all the equipment, everything. He'd had a little auction. When people came to that auction, he said, "Would you also like this child? Would you also like this child? Would you like this child?" He gave all the children away except for one. He gave the children away. Horrible
Mhm.
thing. And then he took Benjamin with him, moved to Montana, married again, had 10 more children, of which my father was number six of that second 10 children. So he's got 19 children, a lot of children.
Right.
So when my father was born in 1922. So when my father was 10 years old, this grandfather passed away. And
Mhm.
so here you have the abandonment of 19 children. Of course, death is not really something he chose, possibly. Didn't happen. I mean, he didn't choose that, but still, there were 19 children. 1932 here in America was the height of a depression. Just everything, the economic stress, all that stress, and then the abandonment, and then other, financial stress, all that on top of everything, and then it just caused a stressful situation. And I'm sure that there were really hard. It was very difficult times. My father grew up in those difficult times, and at age 10, he didn't last very long. He went for a few more years to school, and he graduated from eighth grade. So he became a truck driver, and he'd just be gone through the week and then home on the weekends. Now, he moved our family from that town in Montana where he was born, where I was born, moved to central Montana in Great Falls, Montana. And in Great Falls, where we grew up. But it was a still not a very good existence. One thing that I do respect my father for is that he every Friday night would date my mother, take her out on a date. But it was always the same place, always the Maverick Bar, always alcohol involved. And so during that time, that's when my mother would disclose to him how her week was. If it was a good week and the kids were good, everything would be fine. But if the kids were bad, even a little bit bad, we'd get the belt or we get spankings in the morning, a Saturday morning, and just was not a good thing to look. Everybody, normal people look forward to the weekend. As a kid, I could not look forward to the weekend. There was one time, Anna, that I remember being spanked so hard. I must have done something terrible. I don't remember even what it was, but I remember being spanked so hard that I was black and blue for about 3 weeks. Just it was just a horrible situation. So that type of abuse is where I came from. So the easiest way to get out of that is to move away. So at age 17, right after my junior year of high school, I moved out. And I'm number 10 of 11 children. I'm the youngest. They're just tired of having kids. I can tell they're tired. Parents get tired. but I was until they were getting tired, and so I moved out, moved in with my brother. My brother was a great role model and just a good father, but I still had residual anger from the way I was raised. It's just kind of anger that was stuffed away that it was almost as if I had no say in the way I was raised or things that were going on. I was just, and I thought I was a mild child. I thought I was just the kind, and I'm the only boy of the family that was born between two girls. So I had a younger sister and an older sister, and I'm the bologna between that white bread sandwich. And it was just that was the circumstances. I played with the girls. I really kind of had a more nicer disposition than my older brothers. One time I was laying, I was just outside with my brother. They had motorcycles and I did not, but he asked me to lay down on the boulevard, the grassy area between the curb and the sidewalk of the street, and he'd ride his bike over it. I, as dumb as I was, I said okay, and he ran his motorcycle right across my chest, and it didn't hurt me or anything. It just I heard a few snaps like when your back cracks or something, but just stuff like that. It was what I call it, Anna, was a kind of a set or a culture of anger, a culture of abuse that I learned as I was younger. I knew that wasn't love, although it was consistent. The spankings seemed like they were consistent. The yelling, just all the things that the vocabulary, the humor, everything in that cultural set was was present. It was absolutely present. I like to compare it to, a while back I was out walking and I found this walking stick has no bark on it or anything. And this side of the stick is just really nice and smooth, perfect for your hand and everything. And then you go to the other side of the stick, it has some really sharp points on it, and it's just like where sticks might have been. So I call this the naughty side of the stick. So it's my naughty and nice stick, and that's kind of how I learned spectrum. Learned that in a spectrum, there's a nice side of a spectrum, and then there's a naughty side of the spectrum. I realized that anger was on that naughty side of the spectrum. So I kept blaming my father. Yeah, as I'm growing up, I kept blaming my father that for all failed relationships, for anything emotional or social that went wrong in my life up until about age 35. Then at age 35, I realized, I think I'm responsible for my own stuff. I'm responsible for my own happiness. I'm responsible for my own decisions. And at age 35, my father he'd passed away 7 years earlier. He could not defend himself. He wasn't there. And why was I blaming him? Why did I keep blaming him? And I realized that if you blame someone for your own problems, you don't have to change. It's their fault. You don't have to change. It's absolutely their fault. And in that mindset, you can keep doing whatever you're doing, wrong or right. Just keep doing whatever you're doing as long as you get somebody to blame. And I realized that I can't blame him anymore. I cannot blame him anymore. So go forward a few more years, and one time we were sitting reading from the Bible, and my 3-year-old was sitting on his mother's lap, my wife's lap, and he's just a little rambunctious. We're reading the scriptures, mind you, reading the good word, and his hands are flailing like this, and he flips off my wife's glasses, and it annoyed me so much I slapped him. I felt so bad about slapping him that on my way to work, I called and reported myself to the Department of Health and Human Services for child safety, and there was nobody there. There was an answering machine, so I left a message that I'd slapped my son. Well, they were, you can imagine, they were right on it. They went to the house. They got in the house. They examined my son, interviewed all the kids that were at school and everything. And all of a sudden, I can't go home. I'm barred from my own house, and I'm charged with child abuse. And from that, instead of saying not guilty and dragging everyone through the court system, I just pledged guilty that yeah, I slapped him. And if they're deeming that child abuse, that I did it. So so I was sentenced to 18 months probation, and from that also anger management. They had this anger management class that was just people that were people that did not volunteer, as I did, voluntarily turn themselves in. They did not volunteer themselves in, but they were caught doing some abuse. So one of the guys that was in that anger management class, I remember him telling the story that he had his wife by her neck and held her up so her feet were off the ground, up against the wall until she fainted. Those were the type of guys they put me with for this anger management. I just kind of had to kind of put blinders on for a minute and then learn about, well, what was abuse? Because they have this wheel of abuse, and they're talking all about abuse. And there were several things on that wheel of abuse. I felt so ashamed that I've been taught that type of abuse. Maybe five or six different types of abuse that I've been taught, and I didn't even know it was abuse. So it's a wake up, it's a realization, oh, and when I thought of the spectrum, when I realized where I was there on the spectrum, I thought, well, how do I get out of here? What do I do to get out of this situation? And so I thought, well, maybe if I find or found out what's the opposite of that type of behavior. Just for example, what would be the opposite of sarcasm? And you might say authenticity or being genuine. I thought, well, a lot of people practice sarcasm just for being funny. And so are they ingenuous when they're doing that? And I thought, well, I think it's better to be genuine. So I started just thinking the thought process and moving my thoughts to the other side of the spectrum, back to the naughty and nice stick. Sarcasm would be on the naughty side. Authenticity and being genuine would be on the nice side. So that's kind of where it was. And then a little after that, because of that type of situation, because the anger that was piling up, what would happen? And I'd have be annoyed at one of the children or my wife or something at work or something, one annoyance, and then there'd be another annoyance, and then be another annoyance, another annoyance, and then a flash, an anger flash. And it just piling those annoyances up because I'd be annoyed at someone doing something wrong or someone doing something that I didn't like or something like that. And it was a focus on that annoyance more than anything that led down the path to being angry. So I was trying to get rid of it and doing all that I could. It didn't save the marriage. So after 23 and a half years, my wife and I actually divorced. And so in this single state, I'm just kind of wandering around. I spent about a year and a half doing what I call destination dating. And destination dating was you're finding someone online, find out where they live, find out where you live, create a destination or pick a destination, have a date. And so that's what I did. And I did it for about a year and a half, had a great time. I was living in Charleston, South Carolina at the time. And I went down to Daytona Beach, Jacksonville, Florida, Atlanta, Nashville, Kansas City. Actually went to New York City, uh, Phoenix, Salt Lake City, Cabo San Lucas. Just had a great time going on destination dating. But I couldn't find love. It was too far. I mean, the distance was too far. I had a fun time. And so it was after that time I had moved over to Phoenix, Arizona, thinking one of those destination dates was going to materialize into something, and it didn't. But I was living there, and my older sister, thought I was lonely. So she invited me to meet her neighbor. That is 7 hours away, and I was just done with destination dating. Said, I don't want to. And then she said, oh, come on. And you have to do what big sister says. So, so I started contacting this neighbor, started to develop a relationship. Actually turned out quite sweet. And so I moved to Southern Utah where my sister was living and started dating and it came to the point that, all right, now it's time for big brother approval. So I was taking this neighbor up to my brother, about 300 miles north, up to my brother. And first thing that happened when I went in the house is my sister-in-law pulls her aside and says, the only emotion that the Zolman family learned growing up is anger. At first I denied it. Then it made me mad. And I
Wow.
thought, huh, she nailed it. She's absolutely right. If I still have had that madness, still had that anger inside me. So I thought, this is a perfect time to make a choice, perfect time to erase, if it was possible, erase that stigma that the Zolman family had. So I started reading the color code and I started reading the five love languages, and I liked the principles of the five love languages.
Mm-hmm.
So the five love languages, I read the book 4 or 5 times, but after I read the book, I didn't get it. I liked the principles, but I didn't get the application. You mean, Anna, I'm supposed to guess what your love language is and then cater to that? And they're calling that love? I said, I grew up in an abusive home. I know that's not love, but that didn't sound like love either to cater to that. It sounded more like a manipulation or more of a duty bound thing. And it didn't sound like love. So then Dr. Chapman has this other way to find out what your love language is. And you take this survey and you find out what your love language is. And then what do you do with that? What do you do? Advertise? Hello, Anna. I'm Gifts. What do you have for me today? Just a little awkward, really awkward. Or hello, Anna. I'm Touch. Let's have a session. Or I mean, just really weird. Just I didn't know how to handle that, how to send that out without creating a pity party. So the pity party would be, well, I told you how to love me. How come you're not doing it? And it's just, just that just it didn't work for me. So what I decided to do was contact Dr. Chapman. And when I contacted Dr. Chapman, I asked him if they were licensing those little icons, the pictures of the different love languages, the representations that they had of the different love languages. And the attorney wrote back and said, no, they're not licensing that at all. So I talked to a local attorney here, and they said that theory is not copyrightable, but application is. So when I was a kid, I liked playing games, and it was just kind of a happy family time that I remember. I thought, well, what if I made it a game? So I created my own icons and actually made it a game. I put it on a dice. So here
Oh,
you see service there.
uh-huh.
There are the words,
Right.
time, there's touch, and the gifts.
So
So
you put all five love languages in a dice.
So five love languages, 6 sides on the dice. This one surprised me.
Oh, surprise. All right.
So there's just 2 instructions. You roll the die every day. That's the love language you practice giving away all day that day. So in this whole process, Anna, what I found is about love is that the only thing we have control over is giving it away. That's all we have. And reacting when it comes our way. So most people will react if it's their own primary love language, but they don't see anything else as love. This changes that because as you're rolling the die, you're going to roll all five love languages over a 30-day period to give it away. When you do that, you're going to become what I like to call a love language linguist.
Mm-hmm.
Sexy title. I know you want it. Put it on your resume. Everybody wants that title. But what it means is that you know all five love languages backwards and forwards so that you can see it when it comes your way. Even though it might not be your primary love language, you can see, oh, they're loving on me, and you can respond appropriately to that.
Wow. Yeah, that's very interesting application of it. And like you said, we can practice all different types of languages ourselves. And first of all, seeing how we can give it away. And the more we practice, the more we recognize it when it comes our way. So in this way, we are able to receive it or, spot it. And now we know what that means. So even like start from being a small kid, we can play that game and teach kids how to really like navigate through life and how to be able to give and receive different type of love that is out there. Because like you mentioned, in your childhood everything was kind of like based on abuse, and you would say physical touch, but in the wrong way, where you kind of connected that with love that was given to you, which was not actually what it was. But as a child, you just took it as if it was the truth. But later on, you became aware, recognized that this is not how it's supposed to be, because it gives me that feeling of being angry, and that feeling is unpleasant. I think every time we experience those unpleasant feelings or emotions, it's an indication for us that we are away from what is love, because love would never give you that feeling. You would be at peace, you would be joyful, right? So it means it's not love. Something is wrong, and you have to figure out what that is on your own to see where is the disconnect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Once you,
love absolutely brings that calmness, and it's just it's a calming. It's almost a relaxing that when you're in the arms of someone or your whole or you just feel safe.
yeah,
It's a safe feeling. Abuse is not safe. It's not a safe feeling, or being in an abusive situation is not safe. I'm glad you brought up about children too, and about how young children can learn this. I tested this with a family of 5 children, and the the youngest was 4 years old, and one day the youngest rolls physical touch, and
mm,
4-year-old jumps up and down, pumps his fist, says yes, physical touch, and immediately starts beating up on his brothers. And so I mean, the mother was just trying to suppress the laughter because that's not what's supposed to happen. But but apparently the brothers had been beaten up on this little 4-year-old, and he thought that was love. So it was a perfect opportunity for this mother to teach appropriate physical touch. So this is really an opportunity, a teaching opportunity for young children. You'll notice that there's no words on the die.
yeah,
It's it's all pictures, and young children, even if they can't read, can understand pictures, and just tell them what the picture means, and then they can respond, and they'll think of stuff they can do on their own. So one thing it does for children too, Anna, is that it develops a sense of responsibility. That if you're rolling that in the morning and you're watching for opportunities all day long to love, and then you report at night. I developed a journal. Got a
mm,
journal, a roll of love journal. You can keep track of what you rolled that day, what
yeah,
opportunities you saw to love in that way that day, and then what you did about those opportunities. So
okay.
it's a great reporting system. It could go into grade schools too. I mean, I think it worked ages 1 through 5 or 1 through 6 because mostly they stay in the same classroom. So at the start of the day, they roll the die. End of the day, the last 10 to 15 minutes of the day is usually non-productive time. They're antsy. They've been there all day, and they're just really not productive. They're tired of learning. They're tired of this. Take that time and have them write just a little journal entry. How did I love today? What they rolled, how they loved that day, what opportunities they saw to love in that way. And then just keep that. Who wouldn't love to have a journal from first grade? You or me, or anyone listening would love to have a journal from first grade or from second grade or from third grade. Any grade that you would have a journal. And then it's in addition to that, it's not just what you were learning that day, but it's how did you love? It's more your feelings. What was it that changed you? What did what was it that developed a passion inside you? And it's just tracking that in those younger years could be very powerful, teaching them responsibility, accountability for their own actions.
Right. So let's just remind people what those five languages are. I know there is one is physical touch, another one is spending time, quality time with your partner, right?
Right.
Then we have also the words that you say,
Also the words. Yeah.
the words, and the gifts that you give away to a person. And what was the fifth one?
The service.
Service, right? So service that we give to others, and those are five languages, forms of love that you can give away. And again, like with us practicing it, and especially taking responsibility for what love we can give, and because I believe what we give, that's what we receive in the in the consequence of our actions. And I think with us taking responsibility, we already kind of like started the process of you know us receiving that in a way from maybe different people, from different circumstances, events, but it will come back to us in a certain way. And by doing that, every single day practicing and doing that, we are responsible for creating that life full of love in different ways. Don't you think?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, yeah, and I like how you said that, that what we send out is going to come back to us. Love, and that's the kind of thing that we have to do with love. We send it out without any expectation of it coming back, because if we have expectation, then it becomes more transactional. And true
Mhm.
love's not a transaction. Love is freely sent out, but it's like putting money in a piggy bank. Eventually, that you'll be able to have that rainy day and be able to draw out of that piggy bank. Someone's going to love back on you. But one thing that Dr. Chapman says, that most people send out their what they like in hopes that it'll come back. What they like is going to come back to them. It's not really like that at all with this. It's not this at all. This is just randomly sending it out, and you're watching for those people that light up, Anna. When they light up on the day that you're working, maybe service, and they light up, just take a mental note. That's what they like. That's probably close to what their primary love language is. Just take a mental note that you can wash, rinse, repeat, do it over and over again. And it's the boomerang effect, that you send that boomerang out, it's coming right back to you. Think of the opposite. And as I mentioned, the naughty nice stick, you think of the opposite, that you send anger out, you're going to get an immediate return on your investment. It's coming right back to you right now. Love takes a little bit longer. So you just have to trust the process, trust that it's going to come back, and then just be ready to respond when it does come back.
Yeah, and it also gives you this immediate feeling of joy when you're in the process of giving love, even without, like you said, without any expectation, not even receiving anything in the moment, but the act of giving love, or this, I don't know, I would say like generosity in a way. The act of doing good in a moment, it just gives you that feeling of joy. So it's in a way beneficial for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
We're not expecting anything right this moment, but at the same time, we know we're doing something good, and it's just lights up our day. And who doesn't want that? And I
Well,
think with the right intention, when you start the day with that intention, and just doing something small, and just one thing that you can do today for somebody else, and it's just a way of you kind of like charging yourself up for success, and especially if you receive something down the line, which is usually how it happens, and it's like a bonus on
mm,
top of it. So, and it shouldn't be the purpose.
yeah, and you nailed it. That the just the very action of lighting somebody up or being the person that makes their day, Just we should be going around making everybody's day. Just everybody that within our circle of influence, everybody that we can uplift or make their days just a little brighter, make their day a little happier. There's a huge reward in doing that, and that's a payday almost immediately for doing that. And like you said, it's the what comes back to you after that is really a bonus. It's a wonderful bonus, but just send it out like that so that you've got those bonuses coming on a regular basis. It'll just trust the process. It will do it. Wanted to mention one other thing too. You know, I talked a lot about the anger and a lot about that stacking those annoyances until a flash. After after 30 days of rolling the die, after I created it, this this is the big this is the first big clunky one that I made as a prototype. You know, it was too big and it had sharp edges and it wasn't rolling very good. Have to grind off the edges and make it, but it just wasn't working that well. So I decided on the smaller die and it created it that. But after 30 days, only 30 days, Anna, of rolling the die, I had a new disposition. It was a different mindset. The mindset became, instead of what I grew up with, instead of what's wrong with that person, and go down that critical path of annoyance and then build annoyance on annoyance and then flash. Instead of doing that, the new mindset was, what's right with that person? What can I love about that person? And always watching for those things that are good about other people, focusing on the good. I like to compare it to a magnifying glass, that whatever you magnify is going to get bigger. Who wants to magnify the faults of another? And guess what, that's a boomerang coming back. Why would you focus on the faults of another person when you have them yourself? And that's coming back. So don't do that. It's not a good idea. The media thinks it's a great idea. It sells. People like focusing on the negative that people do. Don't do it. It's tempting, but don't do it. Focus on the good that people do, and that will grow, and that good will grow in that person too. They'll say, "Oh, I feel good. I like being recognized for the good things that I do." They'll expand that and they'll broaden that themselves. But you focusing on that sometimes identifies it for them where they couldn't identify it for themselves before. They said, "Oh, really? You think that?" And then you start elaborating a little bit why you think that, and then they feel a lot better. You've made their day.
Yes, definitely. And I think first we need to connect with who we are and accept ourselves fully, because we know we are imperfectly perfect as human beings. Nobody's perfect, right? But as we are, everything that we've been through, we just need to accept it and own it. And once we fully, in that embrace, we can love ourselves, and from that place we can start also looking for good in people and connecting better with others, and really like focusing on what I love about this person. And like you said, it magnifies and it grows, where attention goes, energy goes, everything is growing just naturally. And it's just a better way of building a relationship with other people, because everything is, I think building relationship is number one, like foundation for being a successful person in personal life, professional life. So with us first understanding ourselves, forgiving ourselves, forgiving others for what they done, no matter how painful it was in the past. I know it's hard, but we're only doing harm to ourselves. We are blocking ourselves from receiving that love, first of all, from our own self, and then giving it away to others. And when we are in that place of peace and we can start looking for good in others, it's just a ripple effect. We don't know how we're affecting other people in such a good way where, we can inspire somebody or change their life. Even with a small act of service or love or anything that we choose to do, it could be very important for that person. We don't realize that. But with
Absolutely.
us doing it automatically, like if it becomes just who we are, the way of living, it's just we can't stop but to grow that new culture of people.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And you mentioned self-actualization and you mentioned the habit thing. This becomes a habit,
Mhm.
and the philosophies are a little bit different. Between 21 to 28 days is the how many days it takes to develop this new habit. And it really helped me, just set aside the old habits, set aside those old traditions that of the fathers that was not true. And it's not really genetic that it was passed down, but it's more the thought process. It's
Yeah,
more I was taught this thought process, and it helped me realize, when I went to my sister-in-law, helped me realize where I was on that spectrum. Was I on the naughty side of the spectrum where the anger was, or was I on the loving side? And I realized I was on the naughty side, and I had three decisions. I could stay the same, I could go to be more naughty, or I could go to be really nice. And I
yeah,
just chose to go the opposite direction, move from that angry language, that angry humor, that vocabulary to a loving vocabulary, a loving disposition, and just loving life and loving others more. It's a whole nother language. It's a whole nother culture, from the anger culture to that loving culture. And it just, once you find where you're at, that self actualization we were talking about, you can go wherever you want. That's the only time you really can make goals, because you know where you're at. If you know
yes.
where you're at, then you can say, well, this is where I want to go. And you go that direction.
Definitely. First, you need to know where you are and just awareness, simple awareness and understanding. Um, okay, I'm at this point right now in my life. This is what I've been through. This is how I'm feeling. But I have that power of choice. If I make that decision, I take full responsibility for what I've created so far. And if it's not of what you desire, then you can change it for yourself. And it's never too late. You don't have to be in your 20s. You can change it in any point of your life. So only if you wish to, if you're willing to go through that change and being intentional of what are you thinking of, what are because your thoughts create your emotions, and then the actions that you're taking towards building a relationship with others. And that's very, I think it's like a first step, it's a foundation to be aware. And I also think about like disrupting the negative thinking pattern, this cycle that we're in. And sometimes we just don't realize how we on autopilot repeating the same type of behavior, which is not serving us, and we don't know what's going on. It's just running our life. It's actually cause of the decisions that we're making, and we need to first become mindful of what we're thinking and how we're feeling, and see from that point on what we want to create in our life and be intentional about.
Yeah, and this is the perfect way to be intentional. You're intentionally rolling the dice. You're intentionally choosing to love in that way that day, becoming more proficient every single time you roll that genre of love. You're becoming more proficient at watching for opportunities to love in that way. Along the way, you're going to see opportunities to love in other ways, and it's this doesn't forbid you from choosing to go ahead and love in that way. You can choose to have many genres during a day, but you're specifically watching for the particular one that you rolled. Just one other thing I wanted to say, Anna, is that people like making in a little tiny investment and having it grow to a big return on their investment. This is one of those things. How long does it take to roll a die? Maybe 2 seconds.
Yeah.
2 seconds. If 2 seconds in the beginning of your day would change your day, would you do it?
Mm.
And that's the whole concept. Just make that investment. It's a small investment. The returns are going to be fabulous, guaranteed.
Definitely. And I'm so glad that we had that conversation today. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and wisdom. And for those who would like to connect with you and look up the book and the game and everything, how they can find it online.
They can find it at rolloflove.com. And it's not roll like the dice because that's outside of you. It's roll like changing yourself within, ROLE of love.com. So
Oh,
rolloflove.com. If they like listening to the podcast and they like listening to books, there is an opportunity too. They can purchase the Audible on off of Amazon, but they probably should not type in the book Roll of Love. They should type in my name because if they type in love, they're going to get a million hits on love this, love that, love everything except love.
mhm. Mhm.
You have to type in my name. Just type in Paul Zolman, it'll pop right up. You'll be able to go right down to the Audible, and it's only a little over 2 hours. Very short Audible about the whole book. But you're going to want the dice to get the die or the journal. You need to go to my website.
Oh, that's great. I'm also gonna add in the show notes as well for people to find it. And as we close, what would be the thought for today for our listeners?
The thought for today is just to try practicing love. Try putting love as that substitute for anything else that's going on in your life. For any of those moments that might be on the naughty side of the stick, try substituting love. And as you do that, as you get into the habit of substituting love, you won't even worry about those other habits anymore. It's going to be a perfect substitute, a perfect insertion. It'll crowd out all those other types of activities that you used to do and replace it with love. We need more people that love, more people that will start that love, because when you send love out and make someone feel good, guess what? In their own circle of influence, that person is going to also send out love. If you send out anything angry, you've also made other people miserable, not only the person you sent that anger to, but they're going to make other people miserable too with that anger. Send out love. It's a whole lot better choice. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy your day. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, hit the subscribe button and share it with others. Stay tuned.